good afternoon, and good morning, depending on where you are. Welcome to our next session of MEIEA Meets on the topic of the future of leadership in live music. My name is Armin Sheomian. I am the current president of MEIEA. I'm also an associate professor of entertainment management at the University of South Carolina. I'm excited to have an incredible panel here today, hosted by two of MEIEA's own board members, and I will start and introduce the first one. But before I do that, just to let you know, this session is being recorded. We record these sessions so we can share it with our membership, and we also post it on MEIEA's YouTube channel. We have plenty of MEIEA Meets posted there, as well as our full virtual summit that we hosted in October. For more information, feel free to join us at www.MEIEA.org. Now I'm going to introduce our newest board member, Professor Gloria Green from Middle Tennessee State University, who will take it from here. Gloria.
Good morning. It's morning here, 11 o'clock. And yes, my name is Gloria, and I teach in our recording industry department, specifically the music business side of things. My primary area of teaching is in live entertainment, and that is what brought me here to Nashville, Tennessee, which is where I am, actually technically Murfreesboro, but I worked for almost 14 years at the William Morris Agency right before it became WME. So that's my live entertainment background. I look forward to meeting some of you guys that I haven't met before, and I look forward to this panel.
I'm Ulf Oesterle. Thrilled that you all are with us today. And the panelists that we have together are folks that I've worked with for a little while on Showmakers, a nonprofit organization. And they come to us today with a tremendous amount of experience in the live music business. I teach at Syracuse University and have been here as a faculty member for about 16 or 17 years at this point. It becomes a blur after so many years. And, in the band year program, I've had the fortune of teaching all the types of classes that we have, from live to the labels, publishing, social media, been around the block. But this past year has been one where I've spent a little bit more time focused on the live business and, really seeing where we are and where we will go. And I've gotten to know our three panelists, in addition to Gloria, throughout this past year with the work that we've been doing on Showmakers. And so before we get into our full presentation today, I'd love to have each of our panelists go through and give us a little bit of the history of who you are, what you've worked on, and where you are today, to put that into context for all of us here that are on the call. And we'll start with Jen Kellogg.
Hi, thanks for having me, Ulf. I teach at Columbia College Chicago. I teach a course called Producing and Touring Live Entertainment. I was the tour accountant for the Vans Warped Tour for about a decade. And before that, a talent buyer at Jam Productions, focused on theaters and arenas and a whole lot of minor league baseball parks. What were those the things that I was supposed to say? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
It puts it into context for who you are, and that's good.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
5-1. Why don't you take it from here?
Sorry for the dogs barking in the background. Of course, during my portion, FedEx drives up and the dogs are going ballistic. So my name's David Norman. Most people call me 5-1. I'm a tour director and tour accountant. I've been touring for over 35 years. I have a company called Tour Forensics, where we help management firms, record labels, independent and established artists kind of streamline their operations. I'm also on a panel called TM101, where we teach things about tour managing, production managing, and accounting. And I'm also the treasurer of Roadies of Color United. And I'm glad to be here. And I want to thank Jim and Jen and Ulf for having me be a part of not only Showmakers, but part of this. So that's me.
And Jim.
Thanks, Ulf. 5-1. They call you 5-1 because you'll never age past 51. Is that right? Hi, everybody. My name is Jim Digby. I am a first-time caller, long-time listener. I've been in event production from childhood and have come up through the ranks to become a tour and production manager, most notably for almost the entirety of Linkin Park's career. I am also someone who peculiarly is bent for safety and after some motivating events, founded the nonprofit Event Safety Alliance to speak to advocacy and advocate for safety in live events, an underserved need. And once we realized that the guardrails of safety, there was more to teach and more to learn within the folks who are actually on the ground producing events beyond just safety. We founded C3 Showmakers to pick up where the safety discussion left off for things like the soft skills, financial literacy, diversity, equity, inclusion, the vast majority of things that are not currently asked for inside the live event production space as competency measurements. So our hope is to help build a future where those competencies can be benchmarked, and we're creating a much more equitable workforce. And there's a known pipeline, there's a known way to come in and known skills to have as you arrive in a tour or at an event site, rather than the kind of ad hoc on the job training that I've had over the decades. Thanks, Ulf.
That's great. So even before we get into some of the details here, we've been paused with this live business for, it's going on a year. When do we expect live music to come back so that we can go to shows, go to events, and actually be in the room? And that's for any one of the panelists.
I'll take a stab at it. And basically the answer is we don't know. There's a great deal of speculation out across the sector. There are any number of folks trying to create physical solutions and operational solutions and dip a toe in the water to attempt to get us to come back to live events. And that's good. We support those who are doing that as safely as possible, because until we find the right soup, the right mix for how we can actually do it safely, we need those who are out there experimenting. There's a horizon that says maybe this spring, because we can do outdoor events in this spring. There's a horizon that says not until everyone's had a vaccine. We're challenged with a few problems there. We're challenged with, what do artists have in their mindset? Where are they biased before they leave home and come to work out and travel again? And then where is the audience biased? And of course, then where are those who support the delivery of these shows? Where are they biased? And how do we make sure that all of them can come back to work safely? There's no easy answer here, Ulf. I think we're going to keep trying until we get there. I will tell you that most of the doctors I speak with and most of those who are in a position to understand the virus more so than myself, we're in this virus for a very long time. And it's learning how to live and operate within this virus, I think, is what we should be focused on.
5-1, are you seeing a similar timeline from your perspective?
Well, like Jim, I've kind of been speaking with like people over at CAA, WME, AEG, Live Nation, and I'm hearing totally different things from different entities, of course. One of the things is, now that the vaccine is really starting to roll out, some people are saying we're going to have like mid-level to small level acts go out, and not to use the word guinea pigs, but they are going to be the guinea pigs to see how it's going to affect people in the long run. Because I don't think that people are going to be comfortable going out doing stadiums or festivals and being in a large impact area of where someone might be able to get sick. And then we still have the issues of liability. If someone does get sick from these shows, who's going to be responsible? Will it be the agent for booking the event? Is it going to be the event? Is it going to be the venue? Is it going to be the artist? So we still have all of those things, but I think that 2022, hopefully we'll have get back to normal. But right now, I think that the word that I'm hearing is hopefully September, October for small to mid-level acts to go out.
And if it's September, October, we as an industry are dealing with some challenges with the workforce. And Jen, I want to turn to you for this one. What do we expect these challenges to be with all of the folks that have been out of work, which at that point will be a year and a half?
Well, I mean, I think that there are such a wide variety of challenges that we might see. Have people had to leave the industry because they need full-time paying jobs elsewhere? Are they able to come back, in these freelance, frequently the live event professionals or freelancers? And going out on tours is one thing, but a lot of them are putting together smaller things as in their freelance career. So having a workforce that is who has been with us for many years as an industry, are we going to see all those people returning or not? Have they had to make life choices where now they're giving up full-time jobs because they want to do, weekend gigs or whatever? So I think that some of it is, once we get into it, we'll really get a better idea of what does that landscape look like. And I think that's going to be one of the first things that we don't really have the answer to yet is who is educated and knows their jobs well that are still there.
We miss out on the cadence of tour. And Jim, you mentioned safety and the Event Safety Alliance as part of this. How do we make sure that our skills are still sharp if we're off for so long?
Yeah, I mean, Jen nailed it. The challenge is that survival at this point in time for most takes, making decisions that aren't related to the live event space, clearly, because the opportunities don't exist. And I myself have, found myself transitioning from someone who's never been home for more than 2 months at a time in 3 decades to, wow, it sure is nice to sleep in my own bed every night. And I think across the spectrum of event professionals, we're having this degradation of desire to put yourself through those things. And do I want to enter back into this unstable market space? So we're going to be challenged feeding the pipeline for sure with experienced professionals. That creates an opportunity, which is partly why we're talking here. But with respect to the other concerns, I feel like that first 6 months or a year when we come out of this and back to work is a very risk intense period. There, our muscle memory, our instinctive knowledge, our intuition for how to do the job at every level, forklift drivers, riggers, planners, you name it, we're kind of out of sync. We're not, our intuitive nature has been degraded as well. So there's this period of heightened concern as we're on the job site that we're trying to socialize and normalize in discussion in every place we talk, so that the leaders out there, when they return, are both empathetic and compassionate to that. They recognize that that's a concern. They create a culture inside their teams where everyone's checking on each other and there's room for this nervousness and there's room for this uncertainty that most people will come back to work with, rather than what has been traditionally a kind of stick methodology to leading teams on tour. Get in, get going. It doesn't matter if you're sick, get to work. We have to be talking about, and we have to be preparing ourselves and those we work with for this kind of different mental space, because we're really going to be challenged.
And leaders need to be aware of that for right now. We do have a question coming in outside of just the music space, and that is with Broadway and other shows, other events. Do any of you have perspectives on when non-music live events might be passed? Is it the same timeline, or is it a little quicker because it's a stable location and maybe reduced capacity?
I just want to add a side comment to this, that until the live events of children going to school become like a regular normal thing again, It is so hard to envision us planning the live events of entertainment coming back, right? And I know that at least in our community, and I have 2 elementary age children, that's a struggle right now. They're still remote and they just went hybrid. And who knows when that live event of school is a regularity again.
Yeah, it's a good point. To your point about Broadway, Ulf, to some extent, fixed venue operations are slightly easier in the sense that, and one need only to look to Germany and the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia, where they've onboarded a program called the Well Venue program, I believe. where, one can increase or modify the air exchange system, which has shown remarkable help in this space. People can be a known distance apart from each other in a theater. You can block off chairs. Whether or not reduced capacity as a survivable model is a different argument. So in a fixed venue, to some extent, it's an easier problem to solve than in an arena or in an outdoor amphitheater where the audience is all up on each other. Each has their benefits and problematic. I believe I've seen in the news lately that Broadway and theater are making some efforts. In Germany, that there's a robust government-sponsored program to improve the air handling systems and get those air exchange rates higher, which gets us closer to reopening. They see it as an infrastructure need. It's a challenge. I don't know that their timeline's any different. And I kind of agree with Jen. Till my kids go back to school.
Well, if the fixed venues also don't have the issue of people traveling on very small tour buses from place to place with each other, right? Like you don't have the traveling crew element of the fixed venues as much.
Yeah.
Can we sort of dive into, what the crews will look like when we do get back together? Because we've got lots of time to plan. We maybe are going to lose a handful of folks due to leaving for a more stable position. I know plenty of my friends who have been on the road and worked as guitar techs or, other roles. They've moved into positions selling cars or something that they see as more financially stable. And so when building out, who the crew is going to be when we get back out on the road, we've had a lot of conversations happening about representation and being diverse with our workforce. And that's something that 5-1, I'd love to have a little perspective from you, given the work that you've done with Roadies of Color United on hiring practices and making sure that we're a bit more representative of our communities when we do get back to the live space.
I think that a lot of things that, because of what happened with George Floyd and the previous administration, how they perceived people of color and women, that it was kind of a wake-up call. I mean, I'm not going to say it's a wake-up call. I mean, this has been going on for hundreds of years, but I think that now with the advent of social media, everyone having a telephone and being able to record stuff, that like, oh, it's really, really real now to how people of color are treated and how it affects us. But moving forward with hiring practices, we're already seeing, I'm sorry about the dogs. I really wish I could stop them. So we are seeing that people now, especially Live Nation and other companies, are, oh, we do need to be more diverse. We need to have more inclusion. And that not only means women, but gay people, trans people. We have to be more open, because it makes all of us as a people and our organizations a lot more well-rounded than having just one perspective of, I'm a white male, this is all I know, these are the only people I'm going to hire. We have to be more inclusive. But also with hiring, I think that we're going to see that tours are going to be possibly a little bit smaller staffing-wise, and we are going to see where people who can do multiple jobs, because that's going to also, and I hope that Jen, you can kind of piggyback off of this, we're going to see that people who can do multiple jobs is going to help our budgets for the artists in the long run, because, eliminating one person on a tour affects the whole budget monetarily for the artist. So that, and I also think that with people being COVID compliance officers are going to be some of the first people that are going to get hired, because every tour is going to have a COVID compliance officer on a tour. And one of the things that I've spoken about was, when we have tours, the larger tours that have an A party, a B party, a C party, we're going to probably have to have a COVID compliance officer with each of those parties, because they're going to be traveling separately, possibly staying at separate hotels. So, and then Live Nation is going to have a promoter rep who is also a COVID compliance officer to deal with the venue. The venue is going to have a COVID compliance officer to deal with all of their things. So I think it's going to be, moving forward, people that can do multiple jobs are going to be the first hire. And that was one of the things that one of my mentors taught me when I was coming up. Learn everything you can. Learn tour managing, production manager, accounting, if you could be a promoter rep, because it makes you more well-rounded. You're seeing things from not only the artist side, but also from the promoter side. And on top of that, your phone is going to ring 4 times more than just being a person who just is a tour manager, just is a production manager. So having varied skills, I think moving forward is going to be a big thing. And I think that also people are going to be a lot more awake on hiring people of color and more women for their tours. We're already seeing those conversations are really on an upward trajectory right now.
I'd like to ask a question of the faculty members in attendance regarding diversity. We know that there's, a level of people that are in the industry already that have the experience, but the universities are the feeders. So we're graduating students out. What does diversity look like in your programs? Because if we're looking for people of, culturally, racially, gender-wise diversity, is our program reaching those people? And who are we graduating out? Anyone could take that, but I'm just curious of the honesty of where are we with our music business, recording industry, audio production programs that are feeding the industry? Okay, now you're being like my student, so I'm gonna have to call on you.
I'll be happy to jump in since I do teach a class and have that perspective. So, I've taught producing and touring live entertainment since the fall of 2013. And I have noticed over the time in that class, which is 25 students a semester, it started out almost exclusively females, which I found interesting at the time because it was such a male-dominated industry. And my experiences as a female in the industry were usually the only one many times in places. I'm seeing more men that are participating, but I was very curious, especially when I started, about why is it that the industry is so male-dominated, and how I think that it has a lot to do with a lot of times men choose to dive in and start getting into the hands-on of doing sound, doing lighting, doing tour management, doing the doing. And women have a tendency to want to get that education and feel like they know what they're doing before they jump in. So I'm just curious from the other educators if that is typical across the board, or if that just happens to be the university that I teach at.
Hey, I'll jump in. I'm Chris. I teach at a liberal arts college in New Jersey, Ramapo College, and we have a production program and an industry program, and I teach a lot of the industry classes. And the program is predominantly male for the production side, which is probably not surprising to most folks. But I've seen in my industry classes, this is my 4th year, mostly male, but I now have classes that are more or less split 50-50. They're not huge classes, maybe 16 people. So I've been encouraged by that. I don't know. I mean, and we speak about all these issues in the classes, and they say that our program is unfortunately very much representative of the larger picture of the industry, where there's primarily male, primarily white, particularly in some of these cases. And how can we have these discussions? So, and I know the program tries to recruit anybody that wants to apply, but at the end of the day, we can only accept the students who apply. So, but colleges, I'm sure, like my college, like many, are trying to reach out to as many people as possible. But we don't have an answer. So
I have something I could add in. Am I on right now?
You are.
Yep. Take it.
I teach at Austin Community College. I've been here 21 years. I'm the department chair for the last couple of years. And when I first started teaching audio engineering, I maybe would have one female student. The last time we were actually live, I had more female students in my class than male students, which was pretty exciting. One of the things that I've really tried to do when I started, we had only one woman teaching in our department out of 30 plus people. I've hired 11 women in the last 2 years, and thanks. I hired a full-time woman on for live sound, which has really been a great area, and way more experience than anybody we've ever had. But I put a lot of work into recruiting, and I've been in Austin since the 80s, and so I know a lot of people, and that's what I did when I took over. I was like, I was going to meetings and there would be one woman, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. How do we start changing this? Like, and saying, it's a male dominated industry. How do we get women into the program? Well, we hire women so other women could see that there's women that do this, right? So I think it's been extremely successful for us. And one of the things too is the only woman that we had teaching before, I would always talk to our students, and our students would, I'd say, especially when I advise students, and a lot of the female students, I'd say, who's your favorite instructor? Who do you, who do you relate to? And they had always mentioned the woman professor. And so I was like, this has got to change. And so that's one of the things I've done in the last few years. And I think it's made a really positive impact on our program, especially on the women coming into the program, seeing people like themselves. They have a lot more mentors. So that's one of the things I've done, just really try to recruit, people that are more representative of our community as well, and not just women, but also people of color. That's one of the things I've also worked on as well. So that's all I have.
Yeah, if I can piggyback off what Tim just said, yeah, we're about to launch a master's program for a creative music technology, and they've already hired several female instructors to teach some of the production classes, and that was definitely one of the goals for that program, was to attract as diverse a talent pool as possible. So yeah, thanks, Tim.
I'll just say I'm Courtney Blankenship, and I run the music business program at Western Illinois University, which is a state institution. And we do have a pretty diverse campus, actually. Within the music department, I wouldn't say we have a diverse faculty at all, and I'm probably one of 3 or 4 women, maybe 3 women. Overall, my numbers in the music, I'm a generalist, so I don't teach the audio production courses. I teach a lot of music business and publishing and general music business courses. I would say my numbers of women have increased since 2008, but overall my numbers are just down. But that's kind of a recruiting state of Illinois issue that is sort of across the board. But I definitely see a lot of first generation college attendees, and as a campus, in our student population, we've definitely become more diverse since I started. I don't know if that was kind of what you were going for, Gloria. We've talked about more diverse class offerings, to be quite honest, and I've already had a conversation that I don't feel like I would be credible to teach certain courses. And I've stated that to my chair. And so that's a conversation that we're continuing to have.
I appreciate all the thoughts. And yes, that's, kind of what I was directing towards, and especially what Tim just shared. I think that it does start with, are we recruiting, recruiting diversity in our faculty, and are we recruiting diversity with our students? And when they get there, are they receiving diversity within the curriculum? I think it's probably a threefold, so that then we can graduate them out to get the jobs that are going to be available out there. So thank you all for sharing that.
I was going to say, one of the things that we did before the pandemic is we do a lot of recruiting. So we go to a lot of the high school, we go to a lot of high schools and job fairs and stuff like that. And that's really helped increase that as well, especially sending out a lot of the women to those events. Then the students see, those high school students see women like talking about live sound or audio production or the music business. So that's helped us a lot. And I can't wait to get able to get back out there again and recruit students, because that makes a big difference to students when they see somebody like themselves. That's just a fact.
Do you also find that a mentorship program or an internship program would be helpful at the different universities and colleges?
Are you asking me?
Just anybody in general. I'm just spitballing here, just throwing it out.
Yeah, I run the internship program as well at for music business performance technology at ACC, and that's definitely made a big difference as well. We have a lot of different companies that we work with. Austin has a lot of nonprofits. Austin's a really cool town for that. Yeah, I mean, I think we have 100+ nonprofits for business, for music business. And and they're pretty diverse. Austin has, tried its best to diversify. So yeah, those internships have helped with that as well, if that's true.
One final statement before I pass it back to Gloria, who has the next question queued up. I think it's important for us to recognize the challenges that some students will have in accepting internships. It's fantastic if you do come from a place where you're financially stable enough to go travel to a certain location and intern. There are some student populations that are not in a position to do that. I think we need to do a little bit better to support those who could use a little extra work and a little extra support to get those internships, but maybe come from a place that is more challenging than the average student.
Ulf, and we've started to socialize the idea of no more free internships, right? So to try to take that away, that inability to do it because they've got to pay their own way.
It absolutely, and it opens it up now to everyone. It's a more level playing field, sure. Rather than those that just come from a privileged position.
Yeah, we've tried to adopt that as well at ACC. And in fact, in our department, we'll have a couple of interns that we pay as well. So that's something that we've really been trying to focus on the last few years, because that does make it more equitable for students who maybe have a family and they're trying to retrain themselves for something. They have a 9-to-5 job, right? So they can actually get paid when they're doing it. So, at a community college, we have a lot of adults that are working. So it's a kind of a different, it's different than when I was teaching at UT, for instance,
Okay, so we have another question from the chat. And this is to the panelists, what will the crew support system social safety network needs look like during this long tail of recovery into the future?
I'll take a stab at it. I think where we are with the Event Safety Alliance is part of this whole idea that currently the current on-the-job training is where the leaders have come from now. Chester Bennington of Lincoln Park died by suicide a few years ago, and that added mental health as a component to the Event Safety Alliance because it was so proximate to everything that we were doing. Prior to that, we were already saying that those skill sets across the team needed to include CPR and AED, and we weren't thinking the other soft skills like mental health. So we're now working to make mental health first aid training a requisite, or at least a recommended practice across the entire team, so that at least the conversation comes from a place of knowledge, and the ability to potentially spot someone who could use a conversation is taught into the teams. I think, Nurit, the idea of what is it going to look like, it'll look like everything that, we need to be doing better at creating a standard of what it should look like. Right now, we're leaving it to our own devices. And I think that's part of the reason we're having this conversation, that the future of the industry, we think, isn't this ad hoc learning opportunity. These are the things you need to have to be a leader in the space. And these are the expectations you may want to consider for everyone on your team. The Behind the Scenes Charity Foundation is helping to craft this mental health first aid training, which is currently an 8-hour in-person deliverable, to something a little more condensed than that via online, so that it would be easier adoption rate across the teams. There isn't a formal safety net, Nurit. The direct answer is there isn't one yet.
Jim, is that something that you anticipate universities could embrace and use with our students?
Absolutely. I think, having taken the training, I left there first understanding that everything I thought I knew about mental health, I consider myself someone relatively in touch with at least being empathetic, was wrong. All of the preconceived notions about how to interact with somebody who may be showing duress, all of them were wrong. So that class, we talked about, geez, this should be in every school teacher. Every school teacher should have this training as part of how to deconflict and how to spot trouble early on. And yeah, if the universities were teaching it, if the high schools were teaching it, we wouldn't have to, I don't think we'd have to worry about it as much. Easy. It's one day's investment.
Yeah. I want to touch on, the different pipelines, because, we are a group of university professors right here, but there are various pipelines that'll bring people to work in live music, some of which will include higher education, many others that won't, whether it's a trade school or going direct to work. What are we seeing with the live business? Is the majority of employment coming from a higher ed institution, or is it spread across multiple pipelines, and our graduates are in a position to compete essentially for those jobs against more people than we think?
I don't want to hog the mic. I just want to give a quick response to that. That's the number one. Well, it's one of the number one problems, Ulf, is that there isn't a known pipeline. So how does a person who doesn't have a circle of friends that intersects with someone like me or Jen or 5-1 find themselves working into a tour? It's completely random. So if we can create known pipelines and known skills training, that's how we give everybody equitable chance to get on tour, in my mind, to get in the behind the scenes orbit. I'll pause there. But pipeline's a big one.
I think kind of tied in with that, it's an industry that doesn't frequently have job postings that are easily found or searchable. It's, you happen to know somebody, when all of us are hiring for a tour, we sit around and think like, who do we know that would be a good fit for this? And then we reach out to those people, right? Instead of creating a job listing and posting it somewhere. Now there are job listings and job boards do exist, but it's usually a second or third step in the search to fill a position. So there's just an inherentness of it's who you know and networking. I always tell my students the things that you are learning in this class are going to make you better at the job that you get and get you to the next job. But it's the getting your foot in the door and meeting people that will know of you that will really help you get that first job. And that's on, in addition to internship programs and other opportunities. But I don't know how to fix that. But
yeah, the additional problem there that I don't think I have an answer for either is the sensitive nature of working alongside an artist, right? The sensitive nature of my reputation hinges on everybody I invite to come into that family. And you, unfortunately, sadly, you just never know what lies beneath the surface of somebody who said, I want to come work on that tour with you. I try to program out while on tour where I invited anyone in any territory in any country to send me a well thought out letter through LinkedIn of what your aspirational goals were. Why do you want a day of mentoring in the show site, as a means of trying to see through whether or not this was just crazy fan trying to get backstage at show, or does this person have a true desire to work backstage? And in most instances, that vetting process worked, but there was one who answered all the questions correctly and described themselves correctly, but then got backstage, started doing the work of being in the environment. And then when the radio calls that the artists were on their way or the artists were arriving came, began to tremble uncontrollably and brought out a bag of gifts and now was ready to accost the band as they arrived in the building. So that paints a picture of part of the challenge of just randomly giving people an opportunity. And I don't know how we vet to avoid those sorts of things.
There's that. And additionally, you're not just working with the people on the crew, you're living with them too. So there's a lot more personality that kind of goes into, and there's 12 of us on a tour bus. Do I want to work with this person all day and then live with them when we're off work is different than hiring for an office job.
I was going to say one of the great opportunities we have in Austin is South by Southwest, and we provide paid production people every time South by Southwest comes through. And a lot of our students who are those paid production kind of people on the volunteers or whatever you want to call them, but they're paid and they get to go to the shows and stuff. They end up getting on tours and going out with those bands from there. Like a lot of them do that. So that's a huge networking for us by having, you know, events come through, even ACL and other events like that. A lot of our students are working those events, and that's how they're getting hooked up on tours and kind of, because, you know, like you said, if they're hanging out with the band and they fit in and they're not like, hey, give me your autograph, and they actually are doing a good job, often, you know, if they're looking for somebody, they may say, hey, I'd love you to drum tech for us. You want to come on the road? And I lose students all the time like that. So
I even recommend to my students any job that you can get your foot in the door in at that venue. If you're a bartender or a server or a ticket taker or an usher, any job that you can get that first little job in, then you have the opportunity to go to everybody that works in that organization with some credibility saying, hey, can I pick your brain? Can I shadow you at a show? Can I, you know, learn more about what you're doing? And that helps them kind of lead their way to more of the event production related gigs.
That then has to be the perfect alignment of happenstance, in that you have to be saying that to someone who's receptive to taking you under their wing for the day. Because again, it's like, I may have experienced 3 bad things on a tour where I was stung by this sort of thing, which is put this guard up, never again. You know, that my energy might be never, my bias might be never again. So that's why I think back to the originating question of, the pipeline is the issue and it's the challenge. Because it is happenstance. Everybody I've personally onboarded has either been through a direct recommendation or someone I've met, and, you know, I've developed a keen radar to know, that's going to be a good one.
Are there skills that we as college professors should have sort of laid out, a checklist, you know, certification or something that would help with building out a university pipeline? Because there's, you know, 30 of us or so that are teaching at various institutions across the US and some internationally on this call right now. And, you know, my best guess would be every one of us approaches teaching the live music class or classes or experiential classes slightly different. And so there isn't necessarily a universal set of skills that students would come out with after they graduate from Syracuse or MTSU or Belmont or, you know, any one of the other schools represented on this call.
My unqualified response is I get the sense that most universities are teaching the tier 1 jobs or teaching the tier 1 skills in the music business, right? The music management, the event management, but there isn't, I don't know, please tell me if I'm wrong. I don't believe there's much of a focus at the production management, the tour management, the teams that are actually on the road making the work happen. And if I mean, aside from what Jen's doing, that's the one I know about. And so I would want to see, as a hiring production or tour manager, obviously the essentials. Do you know where stage left is? And you'd be surprised at how many don't. But then, you know, say OSHA 30, safety training. I would refer them to the Event Safety Alliance's best practices guidance. Soft skills, as I've said, CPR, AED, mental health first aid, a discussion about, you know, a learning opportunity about being in the environment and living 24/7 as a work environment. These are difficult things to teach. I'll pause.
5-1, do you have additional skills that you can add to this list that Jim started?
Yeah, I definitely, Jim, you had some good points, but one of the other things that I would really like to see colleges and universities teach is empathy, because that's one thing that I don't really, because I teach and lead classes at several different other colleges and universities, and most of the students come in with the attitude, especially the undergrads, I don't know what I really want to do. I don't know where I want to go. But some of the skills that I think that a lot of students really need to learn is to be a little bit more open-minded, more well-rounded, and showing empathy, because, you know, it's almost like a caste system. It's, I'm going to carve out my little niche and I'm going to protect everything that I have because I don't want to share it with you, because you might get a gig over me because you now have the same information. So I think that, and I'm a strong believer in internships and mentorships. I would love to see more colleges and universities kind of implement those, and where it's not only for your particular school, but maybe you guys have a system amongst yourselves, like, hey, I have this student at my school that's having this particular thing, but we're not qualified or have the skills to kind of help this student. Would you be able to help this student? Because I think that it should be a more of a broad conversation amongst all of the colleges and universities to help students, because like Miss Blankenship, you know, she has her region of Illinois, Indiana, then you have Nashville, you have Austin. Everyone has their own little niche carved out. Why don't you help out all the students all across the board? Because I think that that would be a bigger picture of teaching and kind of guiding students further down the road.
And to emphasize the empathy part, I would tell you that I value who you are as a human to the almost 70%, then what skills do you come to me with? You know, if I'm taking on board a 22-year-old who is passionate, focused, asks the right questions, wants to do whatever it takes to succeed, and they can build spreadsheets, I can take that diamond in the rough and turn them into a video person, a lighting person, a sound, you name it. It's the soft skills. It's the, you know, how are you going to get along in this family, and how do you create a better family dynamic? The hardest thing to expel once the ship has left the dock is a cancerous human who's come on there with an overinflated sense of self-ego or any number of other character faults that completely degrade this 20-person team that are living with each other every day. So give me, you know, make good humans, like David said, who are empathetic and who are just full of desire, and we can do a lot with that.
We have our panelists here for about 10 more minutes. So I'd love to be sure that we get some more questions from you all if you have those. And, you know, just figured open it up to everyone here, since we've got plenty of experience in the panel today.
One of the things I was going to say, I know I'm not a panelist. I feel bad because I'm talking the whole time. But this is real relevant to me. It's a great conversation, everybody. So it's nice to meet all of y'all. One of the things I was going to say is what's really relevant to me is really getting to know my students. And as the department chair and head of the audio department, I really know my students, and I know where to place them. And I know if their personalities, and, you know, have been in Austin since 1987. I know most of the people who own studios and businesses. And so I can tell when there's a student that can mesh with particular people in the industry, and some, you know, because you have all kinds of students, right? And like Jim said, like, you know, how do you know that they're going to be good? Well, you kind of get to know your students, and then you can kind of place them more accurately, I think. And people that don't have the experience, you know, you place them in those environments so they can grow. And then the people that have those better soft skills, you can put them in those better positions that really help us then. So when I want to place somebody else in that environment, so knowing your students and getting to know them can really help everything overall, because then you're putting your students out in the right environments to get trained, to build their career and their confidence.
And the other challenge you all have as teachers in this space is you're potentially dropping them into an environment that isn't necessarily a nurturing environment. I mean, the leaders across the live event space are of all types, of all manner of bad habits and good habits, and it might backfire on you depending on what team you've dropped them in.
No, I agree with that. Yeah. But also knowing the people that you're dropping them off with too is, sure. You know, that's why I was saying, I know a lot of the people almost everywhere we're providing internships. I know the people, and I know this person's kind of more of a hard ass, and they're going to be really rough on people, where I'm not going to send them our most sensitive student over there. I'm going to send them the one that you said, like, that's more serious and that can handle that and wants to do anything and knows that it's not personal.
Yeah, it seems to me a great unintended consequence of this meeting right here is for us to get to know each other, and you guys get to know, oh, well, there's Jen, Jim, and David. Maybe they've got room for somebody on their team, or we know to come to you. And maybe we help grow that network of other professionals who show up on this call, so you can get a little taste of their personalities and understand maybe you'd want to drop somebody on us.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe this is a good time, for Jen and Jim, 5-1, to talk a little bit about more about showmakers and where the intersection between university programs and showmakers could be, and how these college programs can lean into what we're doing with showmakers.
I think that's Jen.
Sorry, I had a kid shouting at me. I'm talking about how showmakers.
We were just talking about one of the unintended outcomes of this is that we're getting to know each other enough to feel a little bit better about dropping an intern in the situation. And that could be a growing use case for why we meet. And Ulf tied that back around to what Showmakers is trying to do.
Yes. Yeah, so, well, one of the things that from teaching, I discovered when I'm pulling together course material is, for one thing, the book that we use is from 2007 and nobody has updated it. The Business of Concert Promotion and Touring, I think it's called. So when I'm looking for content online, video or written content to keep the class current and relevant, there's the event safety guide. I think that I saw that there sometimes isn't that content that exists out in the world, right? So of course I'm going to create my own lectures and presentations and whatever, but that requires somebody being in my class, and it's less available if people are not going to four-year universities. I think Showmakers has the opportunity to kind of create some of that content through engagement at conferences or speaking at colleges, or create content that you guys can use in your classes to teach some of these topics that don't have existing course material out into the world.
In the chat, I just added a link to the event safety guide, which has been referenced a few times in today's call. And that's something that I've adopted with the classes that I'm teaching at Syracuse University this year. So, going beyond, Ray Waddell's book from, over a decade ago, now we're updating that with a little bit more of the technical knowledge and specific best practices in reopening. And so, when we get back to the live events, even if a student is studying to become an agent or a promoter, they've got to know all the roles. And that's something that I found to be very useful. So the link is there.
I would add that, I just put myself through the PMP process, which is a well-known, well-established project management process. I did it because I needed possibly to pivot. And my skills of 3.5 decades aren't transferable. They absolutely are, but they're not unknown, so therefore they're not transferable. By adopting the PMP, now I can transfer those skills. I also did it because I feel like there needs to be a basis for what are the expectations we want to grow towards for those who lead in the space, and could PMP be an existing model that we can embrace? Well, it's a bit high reaching, I think, maybe for production and tour managers, but the foundational elements of it and the foundational, there's a lot to it that as a collective, we might be able to craft from that what it looks like to be, what are the qualifications necessary for tour and production management. It's a starting place.
Can I put in it's a Showmakers related, but also slightly personal plug, because I saw somebody else said that they had to create their own course material for a producing and touring class. On Showmakers, I recorded a bunch of lectures that you guys might find useful for on artist performance fee deals, or how a tour is routed, really like the big picture of the concert business basic stuff, which is not a direct replica of what I do in my class that I teach for Columbia, but is a lot of the similar stuff that you might find useful.
I know we're short on time. There's a question over in the chat that maybe we can have a time to address real quick, dealing with where do you see live streaming in its future as it relates to live concerts? Will live streaming stay around? Is this something that's just here now and it'll be gone? And that's from Ryan. So if I butchered your question, jump in.
I'll answer, I guess, my opinion on that. I think that electricity and energy of people being in the same physical space to experience something will never go away. So I think that, live events are going to come back, but streaming, now that it exists, once things are in our ecosystem and atmosphere, they don't disappear. So I think streaming will be a way the artists will continue doing that, but I don't think that it would replace live events. But I think that it's an opportunity for artists to think about how to find different revenue streams and how to monetize and really how to connect with their fans and bring value to their fans. So I think that it'll evolve in some ways when live events come back. I don't think that it will go away.
It's a question that triggers a deeper discussion for me, and that is that, it is foundational to the human soul to be in a gathering of some kind of art and some kind of exchange, and that's never going to go away. And streaming won't either. And there's going to be a meld of the two. It's already happening. But regardless of the state of COVID, we're going to gather again. It's just going to take some time.
Fantastic. Well, we are at the very end of this session. So any final thoughts from the panelists before we wrap things up for today? Things that you want to leave our group with?
I've put my email in the chat. I think this is very exciting. And I think it is the exact open door that Ulf and Jen and I have been talking about for, getting more brain power and more horsepower behind our organization and what we're attempting to do. I think the future of education is going to change and evolve and embrace other ideas also. So in addition to the work that you do, there's going to be some short form learning that we're going to try to create. And boy, would it enhance the credibility of what we're trying to do if we were able to do that with the organization.
Second that.
Internships, mentorships. Internships, mentorships.
Yeah, paid internships, mentorships.
I'm sorry, paid internships, mentorships. Paid internships, mentorships.
And I think that the more that the idea of figure it outness can kind of be taught, and that you're going to have to wear more than one hat a lot of times, and integrating things like using spreadsheets. Everybody out in the working world uses spreadsheets, and my students are like deer in headlights when I'm like, you're going to do this on a spreadsheet. And it's not a class about spreadsheets, but that's how the real world works, right? I have them present their final project on a website, because at some point they're going to have to make a website for either their own company or somebody else's. And I've done that, and nobody had taught me. I didn't know how to code. I don't know how to code, but finding those real world ways to integrate into the coursework that they're doing to add to that figure it outness vibe that they'll need to take with them into the world, I think is key.
And can I add one last thing, Ulf? I think that also for the students, if they are going into a particular field, while we've had this downtime, I think it would behoove the students to Google or reach out via LinkedIn, Instagram, or whatever. If they have someone that they aspire to be, like a Rob Light or whoever, reach out to them, because the worst thing that person could say is no. But isn't it a beautiful thing if that person says yes, and you can glean all of that information and a wealth of knowledge from them? So reach out. It's not going to hurt you.
I'm looking for a highly inspired executive assistant. I have too many balls in the air.
Well, thank you all for being a part of this. Jim, Jen, 5-1, hopefully we can get back together and have more conversations like this. Gloria, appreciate you co-hosting today with me. And to all of you that spent the last hour with us, we appreciate you, and let's continue this conversation through this next academic year and beyond. Again, this is going to be hosted on the MEIEA YouTube page for anyone that missed it. I'm sure that Armin will share the link to that, so you can send that to your peers that have missed this conversation but could glean information from it. So appreciate you all for being here, and look forward to more of these MEIEA meets in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you all.
Guys.
Thanks everybody
Bye-bye.
for listening. Bye.